This is a high-speed crash test facility, and we're here to perform our most shocking crash test yet. We'll be investigating one of the hottest topics in car safety, the mismatch that happens when cars of different types collide. What car crash experts call the compatibility problem. The problem is that cars come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes, which means that when they smash into each other, it's rarely a fair and equal fight. For a start, big cars tend to be stiffer than small cars and crush them in a car-to-car crash. Here's a BMW 5 Series crashing into a Saxo at just 40 miles an hour. Add a difference in height between the two cars and things get even nastier. That's because the fronts of cars aren't evenly strong. They tend to be very stiff around the chassis rails, and to a lesser extent the engine block, are much softer everywhere else. And those stiff bits are at different heights on virtually every car on the road. So if you hit a car whose stiff bits are higher than yours, it'll tend to ride over your car, punching through the soft bodywork and making sure that you come off worse. The height of your car is so crucial that even some extra luggage or a full complement of passengers can mean the difference between life and death. Take these two identical Mondeos. The one on the left is loaded up and riding 2 inches lower than the one on the right. Detailed shots of the wreckage show the car that was higher has a relatively intact passenger area. But in the lower car, the footwells and dashboard have been forced back into the cabin as the car was overridden. Just 2 inches difference in height, even with otherwise identical cars, would have proved catastrophic for the driver in the lower car. Some of the worst compatibility problems are when 4x4s run into small cars. Then there's a difference in size, stiffness, and height. The 4x4 overrides the small car as well as crushing it. So what can be done about these compatibility problems? Well, from 2007, legislation is likely to require a test against a load cell wall to ensure all new car models have more evenly strong fronts. We're already seeing extra low-down structure on 4x4s like this Volvo, for example, so there's less chance of them overriding ordinary cars. We're also likely to see legislation to make the fronts of big cars softer and the passenger cells of small cars tougher. All this should help reduce compatibility problems. But so far, we've only considered head-on crashes. In the US, where 4x4s are around a third of the new car market, there's a growing worry over another type of horrifying accident, where a 4x4 hits an ordinary car side-on at a junction. What can be done about that? Well, here's a test done by America's Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, which uses a special rig to simulate the side impact from a 4x4 at 31 miles an hour. This is a Toyota Corolla without the optional curtain airbag. The dummy's head actually makes contact with the high bonnet of the 4x4. With an airbag, the direct hit at least is avoided. According to the Institute, curtain airbags cut deaths by 45% in side-on crashes. But can technology make a side impact survivable at higher speeds? That's what we've set up our test to investigate. The Shogun's going to be driving along this line from there at 60 miles an hour. The Civic's going to be tootling along at 30 miles an hour from that direction. At this point where I'm standing, the Shogun's going to slam into the side of the Civic. Just the sort of crash that could happen at any A-road junction. The Civic has been completely wrecked. Where the driver's side doors used to be, there's just a gaping hole. I inspected the remains with vehicle safety expert Roy Quinney.
I mean, do you think there's any chance anyone would have survived in this?
It's highly unlikely. I mean, as you can see from the intrusion of this, this is the driver's door over here, and that's the handle release there. But as you can see through here, that's the leg of the dummy. But if you open this front door here, you'll probably see the remains of the leg of the driver still in the passenger area down here.
It's actually come off.
It's detached, yes.
It's a massive compatibility problem. The soft side of the car collapses when the stiff front of the 4x4 hits it. The 4x4, on the other hand, scarcely crumples at all, driving almost clean through the car's bodywork. From overhead, you can just make out the off-roader's bonnet practically touching the far side of the car's passenger space. Despite the 60-mile-an-hour impact, the 4x4's front sustains very little damage. The bumper and bonnet were deformed by a few inches, but underneath, the chassis rails were virtually undamaged. The compatibility problem is made even worse by the height at which the 4x4 hits the car. Another car of the same size would have impacted our car lower, making contact nearer our car's sill line, where it meets the B-pillar, a point of strength that would have offered some resistance. But the height of the 4x4 means it hits halfway up the door, where the car's much weaker. The 4x4 survives the initial impact, relatively unscathed, and is still travelling at 45 miles an hour. But its high centre of gravity makes it prone to rolling over. And when its axle catches on the wreckage of the car, that's exactly what it does. So what would have happened to the people inside it?
Well, on the basis it's maintained its integrity, I maintained its shape. This is a good for the occupant because you maintain the distance between the head and the roof. Now, obviously, there's minimal restraints on this vehicle, so it's only the belts that have held him in. So the passenger's done really well, although his foot is trying to hold the door open there. Now, the downside is because there's no inflatable restraints, the arms have come out the window for the driver, and in reality, he probably would have bled to death.
So, curtain airbags would have helped here, just to keep your flailing arms inside the cabin. But they wouldn't have helped anyone in the other car at these speeds. Our Honda was over 10 years old, and newer cars now have much tougher side structures, but they still wouldn't cope with a crash of this severity. This is one compatibility problem that technology isn't yet up to solving. Curtain airbags can help you survive a side-on crash with a 4x4 at lower speeds, but when it's doing 60, the forces involved are just too massive.